Hitting back against cyber criminals, why owner-operators are often seen as easy targets.
Plus, taking a closer look at the shifting demographics of the trucking industry, and truckers answer the call for help in Texas, and all new Trucking with OOIDA starts now. Welcome to the show. I'm Ashley Blackford.
And I'm Scott Thompson. Ashley, good to see you.
Nice to see you.
We've got a busy one today.
We do, yeah.
Here in just a moment, we're going to actually welcome in Ben Wilkens of the National Motor Freight Traffic Association to talk about cybersecurity. This has been an ongoing conversation over the past couple years, I think, especially. So.
Anytime I hear from that guy, I'm like, I need to change my passwords.
Oh, you're not one of those people that has the same password for like every account, are you?
I neither confirm nor deny.
All right. We're going to get Ben to get on your case about that one. We've also got a couple other people coming up later in the show as well.
Abbigail Huffman of the ATRI, the American Transportation Research Institute. She kind of dives in a recent survey on demographics in the industry.
Yeah.
A lot of interesting changes in that.
For sure. And then we'll finish things up with a conversation with Jonatan Quiros of Clark Freight out of Texas. He recently, I should say, carried a load of relief to victims of the flooding there in the state. So looking forward to that. Obviously a horrible situation, but a lot of good people stepping up to help there as well. Ashley, you ever had one of those mornings where coffee just won't do it? I
think I have many of those mornings.
Yeah,
but...
I just poured some Red Bull into my coffee. I'm not sure it was the best decision. But we'll see how it goes. If my heart explodes, you'll
I'll know why.
Yeah, you'll pick it up from there. Speaking of which, or I guess not really, but we're going to talk to Ben Wilkens here on the line now. Ben is a cybersecurity principal engineer for the National Motor Freight Traffic Association, and he's on top of all the cybersecurity threats that are out there right now. Hey, Ben, thanks for joining us. Are you a coffee drinker by chance?
Oh, man, am I a coffee drinker? Kidding me?
Are you a Red Bull drinker?
Started as a trucker, and now I'm in cybersecurity, so I live on
makes
coffee,
sense.
man. Are you kidding me?
How do you take it? Not with Red Bull. I was experimenting.
Black or, yeah. Most of the time black, or my guilty pleasure is still sugar. I still, I know you're not supposed to drink it with sugar, but man.
Well, Scott just poured Red Bull into his black. A little bit of
not
Red
a lot,
Bull.
not a lot, yeah.
But I think was
kind of like elementary school.
That's controversial. That's controversial
very.
For a lot of reasons.
Hey, Ben, I think I may have just invented a new product, so probably.
Okay. I can't knock it because I've never tried it. So
Hey, I'm not sure I want to try it again, actually. But so Ben, I know there are people obviously familiar with what your association does, but for those who are not familiar, can you talk a little bit about the National Motor Freight Traffic Association and what you do?
Sure. Yeah, so historically, National Motor Freight Traffic Association has been around for many, many years in the LTL world, focused on freight classification, setting standards for the shippers and carriers to kind of mutually agree on what to call what and how to classify it for shipment and packaging. We also manage the SCAC codes for cross-border transit, that type of thing. But in the last decade, NMFTA has also started researching cybersecurity concerns in heavy trucks, primarily in the assets, the trucks, the trailers, the telematics systems. And, as that work expanded and as technologies become more and more, kind of pervasive in our industry, we've also expanded the focus of our cybersecurity research into the enterprise side or the back office side, kind of the whole of organization approach to cybersecurity in trucking specifically. So that's kind of 40,000 foot view, what we're looking at. But we're following that thread into how it connects also to cyber-enabled cargo crime, which is a big problem in the industry right now.
Yeah, this is kind of like necessity being the mother of invention. Obviously, we didn't have to think about these things, 15, 20, 30 years ago or whatever the timeline might have been. Do you remember, and I'm not sure actually if you were there at this time, but do you remember when this all started to become kind of a problem for fleets out there, for owner-operators out there? Was there kind of a tipping point, or was this kind of a, one of those slow builds that kind of builds up over time? Obviously, we're at a point now where it's rampant and it's everywhere, but do you remember that time where it was kind of like, oh, we've got an issue here we need to look at?
Yeah, that's actually a really great question, and it's one of those things where you almost feel like the frog has been in a pot of cold water that's all of
Yeah.
a sudden turned into a pot of boiling water, But it's really exploded since, I would say, since 2020, and a lot of that came from an acceleration of the digitization in our industry, right? So we've been using digital tools and electronics for communications and all that type of stuff for a long time, but as the technology becomes a more and more central requirement to doing business in transportation, that has also coincided with a lowering of the bar of entry for the threat actors. It's getting easier and easier to launch fairly sophisticated campaigns, extortion campaigns, phishing campaigns, those kinds of things. And so those two factors have really kind of worked with each other to make the situation accelerate really since the late 2010s, early 2020s, into a pretty serious issue in this industry that's crept up on everyone and kind of caught us a bit unprepared for the impact. And so, what we're focused on is trying to figure out how to shift that needle back to, a bit more balance where it's a risk, but it's no different than, we've got safety risks. We've got, there's lots of risks in trucking that we're used to dealing with. And we want to try and educate everyone and turn this into one of those risks that we have the tools to handle and stay profitable.
Now, Ben, you're in the cybersecurity world, but you kind of have an interesting perspective in what you used to do or what you started out in your career. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so I've been in transportation most of my working career, and I actually started behind the steering wheel. I was a driver, local driver, over the road driver, regional driver, a whole bunch of different kind of flavors for a while. Transitioned into dispatch, so I spent some time in dispatch, driver management, and then moved from there into more of an operations support capacity and started focusing on the operational technology in the fleet that I was working for at the time. As we became more and more aware of kind of the risks of that, I started to focus more on the security aspect, and that sort of led me down the rabbit hole of cybersecurity about a decade ago.
I mean, having been a driver, though, that obviously shapes your perspective on everything you're doing right now. How does it shape exactly what you're doing right now in trying to protect people out there?
I think I joke with people that when they ask what I do, I say I'm a translator. I think it gives me a perspective where I understand the security side of the equation, but I also understand the real world applications and what it is we're trying to do every day in transportation. I've seen it from the driver's perspective. I've seen it from the dispatcher's perspective. I've seen it from a lot of different angles. And so staying aware, it helps keep that context of like, what is it we're trying to protect? And, there's a danger with security of causing too much friction or putting too many steps in the process and really slowing the organization down, slowing the operation down. So I think it's helpful to be grounded in from my own personal experience, really, understanding what trucking is all about and what it is that we need to facilitate as a security professional. What do we need to enable in the organization?
So as we look at this landscape, and you kind of, when you said that 2020 was kind of the launching point, I think I knew that just from seeing all the headlines and seeing everything that's come out over the past few years. But I don't know if I ever necessarily thought about it in that context. Because when you look at it that way and you look at it over being, just the past 5 years or so, it really does explain why I think so many people are getting taken advantage of right now, because this is something that they didn't have to think about, again, 10, 15 years ago. This is a relatively new thing that they're dealing with on top of all the other stuff that they're dealing with as a small business owner. How bad is the situation right now? What are some of the common, I guess, scams going around, cyber attack, situations that are going around right now that are really kind of the biggest problems, I suppose?
Yeah. So, I don't like to be a doom and gloom person, but it is a pretty serious situation. And when you're on the smaller end of the spectrum in this industry, you don't have a lot of the resources. You think of a big enterprise fleet or even a mid-market fleet, and they have probably a security team. They've got some budget for this. They've got, at least a managed service provider that's, security service provider that's helping secure their operation. And at the smaller end, and certainly as an owner operator, independent operator, you're wearing all the hats. You're finding freight, you're driving the truck, you're fixing the truck, you're coordinating everything, you're doing the books. The last thing you need is another hat to put on. And really, I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we're facing in the small and mid-size is how to secure your organization with the budget and the resources you have. Because the things that we're looking at that really are targeting every scale of organization is phishing for extortion purposes. So we used to see ransomware where they would encrypt all of your files and lock you out of your systems, and that is still happening. But what we see a lot more often is getting in and getting either email traffic or data or photos or whatever that's been stored, and then threatening to release that out into the public to get people to pay to keep their private information private, basically. Mm. So that's one risk. And then there's identity fraud is huge, particularly when it comes to carrier identity fraud for the purposes of stealing freight. So that's really an area where these cyber threats cross over into physical losses and cargo claims in transportation. So we see a huge amount of that as a risk, the identity fraud, particularly at the smaller end of the spectrum. And then there's just kind of traditional schemes with fake invoices and double brokering schemes and things like that we've seen historically in the industry. But again, the ease with which those kinds of things can be created and those types of campaigns can be launched is, it's dropped that bar of entry. It's way easier for the bad actors to get in and pull these kinds of things off.
And I know you've given advice before to people. Do you find that, some people think, gosh, this is just so overwhelming. Like, what is it I could do to actually keep my information safe and my business safe? What is your response to those people?
It can be overwhelming if you try to look at the whole problem and all the possible solutions all at once. But I like to remind people you start small and you start with understanding what it is you're trying to protect. What is it really you need to protect? And that's, you want to keep your secret. You want to keep your credit private to you, monitor your credit usage. You want to put good passwords on all your accounts. Don't use the same password for everything. There's small things that you can do that really elevate you from kind of an easy picking or low hanging fruit kind of target to middle of the pack. And that's really what cyber hygiene, we call it, is all about. Is we joke that you don't want to be the slowest person running from the bear. You don't necessarily have to be faster than the bear. Just don't be the slowest one running. And so that's what this is about, is putting some safeguards in place around yourself to make you a less attractive target, a harder target. You don't have to have cutting edge security. You don't have to be the most secure person out there, but don't be the least secure. And that's really, we've put together a list of core controls. It's about 10 different things that people can do for either free or very little cost that will take you from an easy target to a much less attractive target without having to have a huge team or a budget or a lot of resources to throw at the issue.
Can you run through those, Ben? And you don't have to go into great detail on each of them, but maybe just some of the highlights. And I think you maybe talked about some of them there with passwords and whatnot. But on that checklist, what are some of the big ones that you think people maybe really need to remember or do?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm going to start with one of my favorite ones, which is multi-factor authentication. It can sound overwhelming, just even if you're not familiar with what that means, but it's really just making sure that it's not just a password that gets you into your account. Use a strong password. That's another one on the checklist, a strong, unique password for every account, but then put multi-factor authentication in. That's the, where you have to enter a code from an app, or you get a text and you enter that code in, or maybe it's your thumbprint, or, you put your face in front of the camera. Those are all different factors of authentication. That is a huge step in and of itself in securing your accounts. The other thing you want to focus on is keeping your software and your operating systems up to date. When there's an update for your phone, or there's an update for your tablet or laptop, you want to make sure to install those updates. They include important security fixes that address known risks, right? So keep updates current. Another big one is to monitor your credit. If you can sign up for credit monitoring services. There's a whole bunch of options out there for that. You want to regularly review your bank transactions, financial transactions. Make sure you know what's going on in your name. And if you don't need your credit for a new loan or applying for credit somewhere, you can freeze your credit and then unfreeze it when you need it. And that's another good step to lower the risk of fraud. Use secure Wi-Fi. Don't use public Wi-Fi. If you have to use public Wi-Fi, make sure you've got a VPN app installed on your phone or on your device. That just protects your traffic from anybody else that might be on that network listening in. But ideally, you want to use secured Wi-Fi, private Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Change default passwords, on your home network.
Right.
And then a couple other ones, you want to make sure you back up your important data. You don't want to lose your invoices, your customer records, your contacts, all that stuff if your devices or your files get compromised or corrupted. It can be as simple as put important files on a thumb drive and put it in a fireproof box somewhere, offline. Just make sure you don't have your important data in one location only, right?
Yeah.
And then, a couple other ones that kind of round out the list is put some sort of a security software on both your mobile devices and your computers and laptops. Don't run around with no protection. Use a reputable security software. And then really think about minimizing the information you expose out to the world. We all are used to social media and kind of everything's a bit more public than it used to be. But think about what you're posting, and don't post information that could be used to then either social engineer you or compromise your identity as far as load details or DOT information that doesn't need to be shared necessarily in a certain context.
Yeah.
So just be conscious of what it is you choose to share publicly online.
Helpful information. There's no doubt about that. But when I hear you list all these things off, and Ashley, you kind of talked about it earlier, it's exhausting.
It does sound exhausting.
To think about all these things that you have to do just because there are these, select few criminals out there that are targeting you. With the criminals, obviously they're doing this because they're making a profit off of it, and it's from the slower animals in the herd that they're kind of picking off here. It is very profitable for them, though, right? I mean, they're all over the world, and this is what they do all day. Like, what do we know about these folks that are doing this?
Yeah, so you're not wrong. They are highly organized criminal operations. They function just like a business. A lot of these groups, they've got HR departments, they've got financial teams, they have customer service teams where they will actually help victims figure out how to use cryptocurrency to make ransom payments.
Wow.
It's really if you think about if you've heard the term software as a service, so anything that you get like your online email or anything like that, this is ransomware as a service or malware as a service.
Wild.
There's the technical exploits are created by one team, and then they're sort of leased out or franchised out to other criminals that maybe don't have the technical ability, but they have the criminal contacts and the criminal intent to use these tools to go out and attack other victims. So it's the difficult thing from a defense standpoint is a lot of times these actors are in countries and locations in the world that are not friendly to our wants and warrants.
Right.
They have non-extradition with the U.S., so it's very difficult to. It's kind of like whack-a-mole, right? We can figure out where one is, and you can take down their infrastructure, and it just pops up somewhere else, or somebody else starts franchising with them. So From that respect, there's a long way to go as far as combating this at a global level. But it really is, because you can almost use that to your advantage to protect yourself, because they're a business. They don't want to spend any more than they need to get a win. And that's where it comes into, us being a slightly less attractive target is really sometimes all it takes for them to just move on and look for something easier.
And when it comes to some of these schemes, like you said, they're a business and they've gotten better over the years when it comes to their schemes, right? Like, we're not still hearing from like a Nigerian prince. Like, these
They
are
look legit.
believable things, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, you bring up the Nigerian prince. That was a common one for a while. And, they were really clunky. They were pretty obvious, that there was something up with this kind of email or even some of the phone calls. One of the troubles that we're having right now is with the advent of AI and these large language models, anybody anywhere in the world can sound like a native English speaker and sound like they understand transportation. And they can even sound like someone you've dealt with in the past at a specific organization.
Wow.
And so it's getting harder for our automated tools to spot and filter out these kinds of attacks because they're more and more believable. And so that's where the education piece is so important, because we as humans, we're actually one of the best detection mechanisms for these types of attacks, because we often kind of get a sense that like something's a little off here. And I like to teach people to listen to that spidey sense. If something seems off, it probably is. And, you need to understand that just because somebody sends an email from a quote unquote legitimate address, if something seems strange about what they're asking for or what they're sending you, pick up the phone and call them.
They feed off that too.
Trusted contacts that you have.
And they feed
100%.
off that too. Yeah, because
100%.
that sense of urgency that they try to get you to do something before you can take that beat and think about it, right?
Yep. There's a couple of real tells when it comes to social engineering, and one of them is a false sense of urgency. You got to do something right away. There's a fear of consequence or the threat of authority. Those are really common things. And then sometimes you get into like a shame or embarrassment angle where it's like, do this or people are going to think you're dumb kind of approach. That's also used in social engineering. But in transportation, one of the most effective ones is that, has to happen right now, because we're pretty used to that in transportation. A lot of stuff is urgent, time sensitive. Yeah. So it's just understanding how to catch, when something is just a little off, give it a beat, think for a second and say, wait, does this make sense? Is what I'm being asked to do really legitimate, and does it have to happen right now?
As if this wasn't scary enough, Ben, let's really scare people. And I think I know the answer to this, and maybe I'm wrong, but artificial intelligence, I guess I'll just ask you, with this entire situation that we're talking about, is it going to make things better or is it going to make things worse?
So I'm going to give you the most frustrating answer. I'm going to say yes.
I don't know. Which is fair. Yeah,
but we can fight fire with fire here, because yes, the generated AI models are helping the bad actors, but they're also helping the defense. One thing that AI and machine learning are really good at is pattern recognition and recognizing anomalies. Exceptions. And so we are using that on the defense side to improve on detection, right? So as the threat actors get better and better at using these tools to create believable phishing attempts and fake content, our detection tooling is getting better and better at picking up on exceptions to processes and exceptions to expected traffic on the network, so to speak. So it's anytime there's a new technology, the bad actors are going to use it, but the defense can use it as well. And so we've seen kind of a front loading of it's giving the bad guys an advantage first, but we're catching up and we're also using it on the defense side. And now I think that that's starting to even out a little bit.
Yeah.
The reality is it's just raised the playing field a little bit on both sides. So it's more and more important to stay educated and understand how criminals are using these tools and not just what they can do, what we see in the news about what AI can do. It's how can it be misused? Be aware of that.
Now, you mentioned the importance of being educated. I know one of the ways that your association's helping with that is a conference coming up this fall. Can you tell us more about that?
Absolutely. Yeah, we put on an annual cybersecurity transportation conference. We're actually the only cybersecurity focused conference for transportation industry specifically. So that's going to be in Austin, Texas this year, October 26th, 27th, 28th. So we bring together a lot of industry experts from both transportation and cybersecurity. This year, we're actually going to be having a couple of tracks on cargo crime and fraud specifically, both from a lessons learned perspective from folks on the front lines, and also some experts in the field of fraud prevention and cargo crime investigation, that type of thing. So pretty excited about that.
Yeah.
We do some hands-on stuff. We're going to be teaching people how to do kind of a risk assessment and run some tabletop exercises in their own organizations. So a lot of really, really good content, bring people together from the industry and really focus on how these cybersecurity concerns are impacting transportation specifically.
Yeah, it's a great reminder, too, that we're all stronger together when we come and come together and fight back against these folks. Ben, we don't have a whole lot of time, but real quick, if people want more information from you about cybersecurity, from the association, where should they go? So
the nmfta.org/cybersecurity is a great kind of landing page that's going to give you access to all of our webinars, our articles, the guidebooks. The owner-operator core controls are on there. It's all free to download, so we just put all that information out for everyone. nmfta.org/cybersecurity. You can reach me directly on LinkedIn. Happy to talk to anybody anytime.
Excellent. Awesome. Well, I feel like I've learned a lot.
Yeah,
Ben, we really appreciate your time, appreciate your work on this issue, and I'm sure we'll talk to you again maybe right before October, before the event there. We appreciate your time.
Awesome. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Again, that was Ben Wilkens from the National Motor Freight Traffic Association. Ashley, always a good talk there. A little terrifying.
It is a little terrifying, but he's got some great advice and,
information is power, as they say. Speaking of information, right after the break here, we're going to speak with Abbigail Huffman of ATRI about a demographic study they just put out, and it's got some interesting stuff as well. That's up next right here on Trucking with OOIDA.
Welcome back to Trucking with OOIDA. We just heard from Ben Wilkens talking about cyber theft, but unfortunately, that's not the only thing we have to worry about.
Yeah.
CargoNet just came out with their second quarter report, a 13% year-over-year increase, 884 supply chain thefts across the U.S. and Canada was reported in the second quarter. That was a 10% increase from the first quarter. Those are a lot of numbers, but it's going up.
It's going up, and it goes up every single time we look at this report, it feels like. Yeah.
One interesting thing, metals theft is going up, nearly doubling with a 96% year-over-year increase, which they just said it's kind of a sign of the times with organized crime, copper trading.
Copper, yeah.
It's
that makes sense. I just saw two in Philadelphia over the weekend. There was another meat theft.
Those are always interesting to hear about.
Like 40 boxes of meat were stolen, about $22,000 worth. So as we're dealing with the cybersecurity threats, we're also dealing with these traditional, I guess, traditional threats that are out there as well. But again, Ben Wilkens, thanks for his information. Their information is
Very
power
helpful.
and fighting back these criminals. Speaking of information, let's get Abbigail Huffman of ATRI on the line now. They just put out a demographic study that talks about the shifting demographics in the trucking industry. Looking forward to speaking with Abbigail. And Abbigail, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
So ATRI, you've got a lot of interesting research that you do over the course of any given year. This one, I think, is interesting for a number of different reasons. And what we're talking about here is just the trucking workforce, the diversification of it, how it's kind of changed over recent years. Take us back to the start of this, the purpose of this research. What did you set out to find, and I suppose why as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So ATRI, we are the nonprofit trucking research organization of the industry. All of our research is on our website, truckingresearch.org, and we have a research advisory committee. They meet every single March and identify about 5 priorities they want us to dive into, really to just provide data-driven responses to what is happening in the industry. And so back in March of 2024, our Research Advisory Committee identified 2 different priorities. One being, hey, you've got a lot of data. There's a lot of data out there on truck driver demographics. Can you tell us how that's evolved? And so that was one of the priorities that went through. And the other was looking at pathways into the industry. Given they're both focused on truck driver demographics and how things have changed, where we could go from here, the 2 priorities got merged together. And they do a really nice job of giving a presentation of this is where we were, this is where we are, and here's where we can go if we put the right strategies into place to try and recruit these groups.
When it comes to this research, where does the information come from?
Yeah, we actually got really creative and had to get our data from a lot of different places. The Census Bureau was really a great resource for this project. They've got a query tool online that we pulled a lot of those essential trends over time from. We actually had the help of OOIDA. They shared some of their historical surveys. OOIDA was really instrumental in helping distribute our survey. We had a lot of input from owner-operators and independent contractors in both a driver survey that we did. We also did a motor carrier survey on hiring practices to better understand this justice-involved population, which I'm sure we're going to talk about, which is basically anybody who has involvement in the justice system, whether they're on parole, probation, were incarcerated, or were in jail. And so we tried to do surveys. We did some interviews to get some more qualitative responses to some of the findings that we were coming across.
And the idea with this information that you're getting into here, and we'll talk about it in more detail in just a second here, but the purpose of it, the importance of it is, I think, looking at where we were, looking at where we are now, and I think looking to the future, trying to figure out how to maybe pull more people into the industry. Is that maybe an oversimplification a little bit, but is that kind of the idea and the importance of this?
Yeah, absolutely. It's so easy to just assume things are what they were 5 years ago, but that's not quite always the case. And this research emphasizes one of the first findings is around age, that we've seen an uptick in age. And I think everybody in the industry has been in a room where this has been a conversation about how do we replace the aging workforce? How do we set ourselves up for success down the road and connect with some of these younger generations? And as the average age increases, we're seeing a shift in what used to be a bunch of 40-year-olds to now 50-year-olds. So how do we account for these changes over time? Because we might be fine now, but where are we going to be in 5 or 10 years?
Yeah, and age is one of the categories that you kind of get into in this report here, and I suppose that's a good starting point too. What did we learn about the trucking population and the age of the trucking population? How has that changed over the past couple decades? And what does it look like now? What does that mean for the future?
Back in 2008, the average age of truck drivers was 45. It is now 47 years old. And while that might sound like not a huge change, that is pretty substantial when you're talking about millions of people. The U.S. labor force has remained at 41, 42 years old. So there's a slight uptick in age there, but it's still much younger than what we're seeing for truck drivers. So the more we deviate from the U.S. labor force, there's definitely a need to find ways to connect with younger drivers. And actually, ATRI put out a study back in 2022 that looks at how to integrate younger adults into the trucking industry. And that report's not just for drivers. It also looks at office roles, diesel technicians. Younger generations are motivated by different things. So when you're thinking about how to recruit them and what you need to do to keep them in the industry, it looks a little bit different.
Now, when it comes to gender was something else that you also looked at. As far as the percentage of women in the industry now as compared to years past, what did you find with that?
Yeah, actually, ATRI put out a study last year that looked at a lot of the barriers that women truck drivers encounter. And part of that research was we need to figure out what the percentage of women in the industry is, because you go to different sources and they say different things. Our crash predictor back in 22 found that the percentage of women was 2.7%. And we're like, wow, that's actually quite low. So let's dive into some other sources. We went to the census. We went to 5 different state DMVs, and we found 4%. That was the lucky number we got from both sources. both with quite a few drivers in their database. So we feel pretty confident that 4% is where it's at for women right now.
Can we kind of maybe look at these two things together, looking at age and looking at gender as well, because there are certainly challenges for each of those categories, I think, when you're trying to pull more people in to the industry. But it also means there's opportunities there with regard to both those groups, I guess we could say, in terms of research as well. Talk a little bit about what that looked like, because you did look at this in your research into, what the challenges are and kind of how to address them and make them opportunities to maybe speak to these people who are not perhaps interested in a career in trucking, but could be, right, with the right kind of outreach. Talk about, what the implications are, I think, for both of these groups. And I think you can probably lump them into one here, but again, with regard to age and gender.
Yeah, absolutely. Our report is called Evolving Truck Driver Demographics, Issues and Opportunities. It does lay out, this is where we are, but here are some opportunities going forward. And the report really lays out that there are a lot of young people in other non-driving trucking roles. There are other women in non-driving trucking roles. So how do you create that pipeline so that women can see themselves behind the driver's seat, or even younger adults can see themselves behind the driver's seat? I know the report does touch on, you've got some insurance barriers, you've got the interstate commerce law of 21 years old as a barrier, but once you get them in the door and they see the opportunities, how do you, as a fleet, really market that transition, support that transition to becoming a driver? And it doesn't always have to be over the road. I think this research really focuses on over-the-road drivers, but there's a lot of different driving opportunities out there, and making sure people are aware of all of those different driving opportunities, that it's not you got to fit within this box, is very critical too.
Well, yeah, and so many of the things too, and I know you at ATRI and your colleagues there have done research on this as well too, but when you talk about younger people and you talk about women in this way, again, and trying to get them into the industry and staying there, in terms of retention, it really is about how you treat them once they are in the industry as well, right? This is, bathroom access, this is overtime pay, this is any number of other issues that are out there where I think a lot of people come into the industry and are not treated exactly, in the best way. That has to be a message, I would assume, that's going out to fleets as well too, when they see this information about what's keeping folks out of the industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when we did our women drivers research, we really emphasized that this is a two-pronged approach. Yes, you have to get them in the door, but what are you doing to support them once they're in the door? And we looked at what are the key reasons that men and women leave. Men commonly leave because of retirement or too many government mandates, where women are leaving because they're not getting the home time that they want or the family time that they want. So if drivers are articulating, these are things I need, how do you support them in making sure that they get that?
I know another thing you looked at was racial diversity. What did you find with that?
Yeah, racial diversity has actually accelerated at rates beyond what we're seeing in the U.S. labor force. Between 2014 and 2023, the U.S. labor force went from 77% white to 72% white. The truck driver workforce went from 77 to 63. So it dropped an additional 9 percentage points beyond the U.S. labor force, and we see increases in African-American drivers as well as Hispanic drivers. We still trail behind in the Asian population compared to the U.S. labor force, but we're just seeing so much racial diversity really explode in the industry.
When we talk about the big picture here, and again, what I think is great about ATRI research is you don't just point out problems or challenges, as you kind of talked about there a few minutes ago. You also look at these challenges as opportunities to expand the industry and make it better for a bunch of people out there. In this report in particular, you look at a couple of different pathways toward getting more people into the industry. And I think it's interesting the way, that you're looking at this issue in this way. Talk about those two pathways and exactly, what's the idea there behind them?
Yeah, I do want to give some credit to our research advisory committee. We had a handful of individuals that were extremely passionate about, hey, we've got to find some workforce development opportunities and really just what are some populations out there that might be underserved, underrepresented, that could really, really benefit from the opportunities that trucking provides. There's a lot of financial stability. If you find the right financial support when getting in, it can really cover some of those costs. So the two populations that really came to the surface and came to fruition in this report were former foster care youth, as well as justice-involved individuals, which we defined as people who came into touch with the justice system, parole, probation, were incarcerated or in jail.
Yeah. So when you, go ahead.
I will say the one thing that kept resonating from the start to the end of this research for me was that each of these individuals from these backgrounds is so unique. Each experience is so different. And so it's important to remove any bias that you have and judge each individual based on what they're bringing to the table, not by the record that they bring.
Right.
I was at a conference back in May, and there was somebody who got up on stage who has a criminal history. And he said, imagine walking into a job interview and they have your biggest mistake right there on a piece of paper in front of you.
Yeah.
And it's so true. People who have a criminal history, unfortunately, do sometimes encounter that.
What I suppose, and this is maybe a tough question to answer, but what would it take to, I guess, shift that mindset in the industry to give these folks a chance where maybe they don't have one elsewhere? You kind of talk about that a little bit, but what does that look like, I suppose, for the industry?
The first thing is having conversations and realizing that, hey, this is a population that maybe you haven't in the past really considered, and say, okay, how do we adjust our hiring practices? How do we be more open-minded and not, I don't want to say everybody's judgmental because I know that's not the case, but how do you remain open-minded and look at a person for what they can bring to the table? Unfortunately, there is a lot of systemic barriers up against foster care youth and justice-involved individuals. They struggle financially. They struggle with housing, struggle meeting day-to-day needs. And so the industry has to kind of get creative in making sure that they get the transportation to and from work and things like that. And there are programs out there, and the report certainly highlights them that can help bridge some of those gaps.
It's interesting you're talking about this, too, because I'm wondering, as I hear you talk about it, why, or maybe not why, but is trucking trucking industry in a particularly better place, I suppose, to address the needs of these people and welcome them into the industry as opposed to other industries? It's kind of a question that is kind of out there, but does that make sense? Is there? Yeah. Is trucking positioned for this better than others, maybe?
We had a survey respondent say, I went from homeless to being able to take care of myself, and that the opportunities that trucking provided gave them not only a place to sleep every single night and a place to eat food when they were hungry, but it also eventually gave them stability to buy a house and to lead to other things. And it's truly a door that opens you up to other opportunities. But you have to find the people that will give you the chance.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Abbigail, as we wrap up here, just real quick, big takeaway from this, if anybody listening remembers one thing from this conversation, what would you hope that they would remember?
The workforce is changing. It has been changing. It will continue to change. And you just got to be open-minded about the people you let in your doors. And there's a lot of really great talent out there.
Yeah, great point. Mm-hmm. Abbigail, really appreciate your time, appreciate your work on this, and appreciate all you do there at AdTree to keep us informed and educated on all these matters. We really do appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and check us out at truckingresearch.org for this research and more.
Our thanks to Abbigail for all that helpful information. We've got to take a short break, but coming up, we're going to hear from one of the many helpers that have come to the aid of those in need in Texas. Stay tuned for that.
Thanks to all the hardworking drivers across the U.S. from the Allen Lund Company.
Penske is the trusted source for quality used trucks. Whether you search our website, call our sales staff, or bid at our online auction, you are sure to find the right used truck for your business. Visit PenskeUsedTrucks.com to view our inventory and learn more.
High heat and low lubricity can break your diesel fuel down fast. Summer driving means crowded roads, more stress, dust, and a bigger risk of costly engine damage. Howe's Diesel Defender protects from the inside out, cleaning, lubricating, and fighting injector wear. Visit howsproducts.com.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
At Truck Stop, we built a better load board for carriers like you. Sign up today and access over 600,000 loads on the most trusted online load board. Learn why the best in the business rely on Truck Stop to make more money and start driving your profit today.
And we're back. Ashley, a few weeks ago when the Texas flooding was really kind of hitting the headlines and was at its worst there, we spoke with Danny Schnautz, OOIDA board member, about what they were doing to kind of help out for the relief efforts there. Yeah. He mentioned at the time that they had a driver who had carried a load out to that area for relief. Yep. And actually, that person's name is Jonatan Quiros. He is with Clark Freight, and we actually got him on the line. Yeah. We're going to speak to him now. So, Jonatan, thanks for joining us.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Can you tell us a little bit about how this began? Because you've been hauling relief loads, I believe, from where you're at to Central Texas there. How did this first start for you, that first load that you carried? What did that process look like?
Well, yeah, I just received a call from my dispatcher, and he told me if I'd be able to go to Caribou to deliver a load. And my answer was, yes, awesome, I would do it. I'm happy to help.
Yeah, what specifically, they asked you to help out, and you jumped at the chance, it sounds like, and were real quick to respond there. Did they give you information, like what kind of help were you providing? What did you haul out there? And when was this? I guess how many loads have you taken too?
Yeah, I just took one load. It was a trailer full of water and goods, paper, goods, some kind of food,
Yeah.
And how do you prepare yourself for these situations? Does it kind of feel like just a regular haul? I mean, this one's a little bit different, right?
Well, yes, different because, you don't know what to expect when we arrive at a place where, it's damaged. So I know I have the responsibility to help the people in need,
Yeah. What was that like when you first got to the area? Which area did you deliver that to, and what did it look like, I suppose, when you got there? I imagine there were a lot of people kind of running around and trying to do what they could, but what did that look like?
Well, I saw a lot of first responders and a lot of helps. I went to Ingram, Texas, to the local fire department. So they expected the truck and they unload the truck over there. But you can see, you easily see the people in need. And it's amazing how people quickly respond to help the community.
What's it like, being there? Of course, seeing it on the news is hard, but being there on the grounds and, seeing the people in need, what was that like?
Well, my heart is broken because you can feel the people is, the spirit is low for the people, and they need help.
Yeah.
They need help.
Mm-hmm. I imagine that was something that, yeah, and I imagine that's something that when you get there, kind of like Ashley's, I think, asking about there, that has to be a very sobering experience, a very serious, situation that you're looking at there, and I'm sure that hits you close to home. Did you think about family, what those folks are going through, kind of what was going through your head when you saw the situation there?
Yes, absolutely, because many people lost everything, their houses, I think many lives. Yeah. People lost life, and it's hard. It's hard.
What was the response like? You say you dropped this off at a fire station. Is that what you said?
Yes.
What was the response like from the first responders there when you were able to get some water and supplies to them?
Oh, they're so grateful. They're so grateful for all the help. They're grateful.
Have you done this kind of thing before, or was this the first time kind of delivering relief?
Yeah, actually, this is my first time delivering this kind of load. My first time.
And you haven't been back since. It doesn't sound like, because you just had the one. But is there a chance that you'll go back again and maybe haul another relief load out there?
Definitely, I'll do it many times. I can. Definitely, yes. I took my son with me. He's 10-year-old, my boy, and I took with me. So just to teach him the importance of compassion and help the people in need.
What was his reaction to seeing what was happening?
Well, he probably don't understand what is really going on, what's going on. But I think it's a good opportunity to teach him that if we can help, just help, just do it. Don't even think about it. We have the ability to help other people.
Yeah, and that's an experience he's never going to forget.
No, definitely not. Were there any issues with like the roads or the route you had to take that you had to look into beforehand?
Not really to the place we went, because the access to the city was damaged. It's only for the citizens. So the place that we went, it was it was okay. You don't see damage, but like maybe 1 mile down the road, all the disaster.
Yeah, it's not too far away. Where the water that you were hauling, was that donated by somebody, or where did that come from?
I believe it's donated from the people of Pasadena. I believe so.
Pasadena, Texas. Yeah. Okay. So
yes,
donated,
Texas,
and obviously they need a way to get it there, and you were that way to do that. So without you.
Correct. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, because of Clark. Clark, and as a truck driver, my dispatcher called me if I would be able to do it. I would say yes, absolutely, yes.
Yeah, for sure.
I know you've only done the one load, but I'm just curious, do you have any advice or recommendations for anyone listening who might want to do that and help out?
Well, my recommendation is, when we see people in need, our first response is help. We need to help.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good advice.
Yeah, we, as we've said before, our thoughts obviously go out to everybody affected by this in Central Texas, and thanks to folks like you for stepping up and helping in any way that they can. It does make a difference. Yeah, one person can make a difference. In this situation, you made a difference there. So, thank you.
Yes, we appreciate it.
To you as well for that. And as well, thank you for your time. We really, really do appreciate you sharing your story with us.
No, thank you. Thank you.
Our thanks to Jonatan again. I appreciate his help, and really all the truckers that are helping out there in Texas.
Absolutely. Ashley, we don't have a whole lot of time here, but just a few moments ago, Louis Pugh, Executive VP of OOIDA, finished up testifying before a Senate subcommittee. We're going to go through all of that to find out what he talked about, what he was asked, what kind of the topics were of conversation there. This is all about trucking and the commercial bus industry, so we will have full coverage of that on Thursday's show. As for now, that's a wrap on today's Trucking with OOIDA. Thanks for listening. We'll see you again soon. Today's episode of Trucking with OOIDA was brought to you by a dedicated team of people that includes Jim Fetzer, Keegan White, Tennille Flick, and Kim Boren.
Got thoughts? We'd love to hear them. Call us at 1-800-324-6856 and leave us a message. Or you can send us an email to podcast@ooida.com, and we might include it on the show.